And a very warm welcome to all of our panelists. I think the topic of the discussion for this panel in particular is something I think that we all deeply care about. Certainly, I think for us at Shinomics, it is a topmost priority for us. And just to set the context, so we're talking about creating a culture of equality and how do we really prioritize that, because we know when we do it creates a win-win-win for everyone. For the business, certainly multiple studies have now been done that have shown the tangible impact it can have. The latest study that I came across was last year by Accenture, which showed when you create a culture of equality, both men and women are 6 times more likely to adopt an innovation mindset. So a clear impact there. We know it positively impacts both men and women. Another study that I read, and now going beyond business outcomes, what we know is it also positively impacts the emotional and physical well-being of individuals as well. And when you don't have a culture of equality, our mental health and physical health also suffer. So that's how important this is. And of course, in a larger context, I think this year in particular has really shown us how important it is for to create that kind of environment, whether it's in our organizations or beyond, where people really feel included, really feel they can show up with their full selves in an environment that allows them to collaborate on equal terms. So absolutely a very, very important topic. So let's kick it off and dive deeper into this subject. The first question I would have to set the context and even more would be, how do we even define culture of equality? Because it can mean, the word equality can mean different things in different contexts. So are we talking about creating equality in leadership teams? Are we talking about equal pay, equal policies, or something else entirely? And also, when we do, what is the impact that we can see on the business? So would love to hear some specific examples. So Dr. Swati, I know you are doing a lot of work around this at Dr. Reddy. So would you like to kick this off with some thoughts on this question?
Thank you so much. I'm very passionate about this entire theme and topic that we're talking about, for a reason that this is something which has the power to really touch and transform lives and businesses. And you said that some time back. So when we're talking about touching and transforming lives, it's practically helping and enabling every person who comes to work, irrespective of gender, to blossom and flourish. It is about helping people unravel their best selves at work. And if you asked a question about what does equality connote, I think simple questions are most difficult to answer. But it just kept me, thinking, what does it really mean? So when we talk about equality, it's not like a one size fits all. It's not about a level playing field which says that everybody is the same. It's about celebrating diversity and, more importantly, creating a culture of inclusivity. Easier said than done. Because when we talk about inclusivity, it is about acknowledging that people are different. And when they come with the differences, it's about leveraging those differences to move ahead for business agendas. Now, when we're talking about this particular topic and thinking about, does diversity, does equality in terms of gender really have rich dividends in terms of payback to business? I think the paybacks are enormous. When it comes to divergent ways of thinking, when people start looking at it differently, whether it's gender at work or any forms of diversity, could be even generations that we have, or it could be diversity of cultures or communities. But now since we're talking about gender, let me stay on that. And I can tell you for a fact that when we have people working with different mindsets, they are able to look at the same issues that they're grappling from divergent perspectives. And fortunately, the best blossoms in terms of a solutioning. Okay, that is what happens. Now, when we talk about innovation, it's a lot about letting go of the past. It is about a departure from the status quo. It is about preparedness to adopt the newness. It is about being agile. It is about being adaptive. It is about changing with the times. And when we are looking at all of this, when you have a workforce which is truly different and consolidated in the shared vision of taking the organization along, uh, that just plays out so wonderfully. So the equation is very, very sharp. Now, why does this happen? It happens because the ecosystem that is created by virtue of the equality card that we're talking about is one where people feel very psychologically safe to express themselves. It's not about having a range of policies which says, okay, when you're hiring, you do this. It's not only about getting in people who are different, it is about getting them and growing them so that the differences can add value. I think to my mind, these things stand out and more as we go along.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Swati. I think you said it beautifully. It is about celebrating diversity and creating inclusivity. And what really fundamentally allows us to do that is to create that culture where everybody feels safe to really share their point of view, be themselves above all else. Would love to hear either from Vinita or Shanali if you have any thoughts on this question as well. Vinita, I know you're doing a lot of work on innovation as well at the Center of Excellence at Dell. What have you seen in terms of this connection between creating this culture of equality and that actually leading to tangible benefits in terms of innovation?
Yeah, no, taking on from what Dr. Swati was saying, and very beautifully put, Dr. Swati, I think just the whole, when you ended with how beautiful the world will be after we sort of move ahead, and it's always a journey. I think we're never going to be feeling very comfortably saying we are done and this is equal and inclusion. There'll always be one more thing that we'll find and we'll uncover. But to your point, to your question, Bhavna, at Dell, we've done years and years of work around it, and I'll talk about a few programs specifically later. But I'll give you a recent example and a recent story. So we obviously, like every organization over here, are very marching towards inclusivity. We have, from a gender perspective, from a people with disabilities perspective, from the whole LGBTQ community, we are expanding our workforce to be more inclusive. But even after you do that, how do you all bring it together towards innovation? And I can't imagine not getting my whole self to work, right? You mentioned that twice, Bhavna, and every time I was like thinking so deeply about it, that if I have to get up to go to work and feel that I'm not bringing myself fully, how can I even innovate? How can I even think about a culture of innovation? So it's a very, very gradual process. I'll just talk about one program right now, and then as we go along, more things. So we have a workshop called MARC. And MARC is, the full form for that is called Many Advocating Real Change. We run it with a partner organization, and we've been doing it for years now. So last year, we ensured all our people managers do MARC. And MARC is one of those trainings that etches in your mind completely. Like I did it 2.5 years back, but I still visualize that workshop, and I walked out of that learning so much more about my colleagues. So it does work on the stereotypes and the biases that we carry, uncovering your unconscious biases. Again, that's another journey, right? You keep doing it. Just 2 days back, I uncovered a bias that I didn't know I had, and you have to just be aware about it. But it opened our minds to look for these, right? And beyond gender, it went so much more deeper. Like I remember when I was doing this with my peers, I discovered all of us had such different past lives, right? Like somebody's parents were farmers, somebody's both parents were educated. The difference, the privilege that comes with coming from a whole educated parenthood of both parents being educated is very different from the opposite. And I just walked out saying to myself, never assume, never assume when you watch, when you judge unconsciously, because you do not know the journey that the person comes from. Now, quickly talking about how this workshop has impacted our culture, right? We've done it for all our people managers, 100% of our people managers, and this year for all our employees. So now we are on a level playing when it comes to language. So if you and me are colleagues and you're talking a different language from me and we've both done Mark, we can talk to each other and saying, no, this is not in line, right? And of course then we have the standard things of being able to raise a complaint if something happens, being able to call it out, and it's always heard, your voice is always heard or investigated, and the standard practices of ensuring that after you've done all this you have a system in place to be able to call it out. But that common language setting with the help of Mark was very, very important as a milestone in the company.
Mm, that sounds really powerful, actually, to be able to have that common language around which to have these conversations, because otherwise these conversations can be difficult. But if you have a common language to have these important discussions, that makes it easier. And I also like that you mentioned that people feel safe enough to call it out when something is happening that goes against that culture of equality.
Correct.
That's also important. Wonderful. Shonali, let's turn to you. I know at Indegene, you are very passionately creating this, very consciously creating this culture of inclusion. And one thing we know that really fosters that culture of inclusion is when you literally include everyone, men and women. So if we are, let's say, let's stick to the gender space for a moment here. One thing we know is when you include more men in initiatives that are supporting gender parity, organizations that do that are much more successful, see a lot more success in creating that gender parity as compared to when we aren't involving them as much. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on how are you working towards that, and what kind of initiatives are you supporting towards that end?
Thank you, Bhavna. One of the main things that all of us are realizing in the diversity space is as we focus more and more resources on mentoring women or growing leadership skills in women, we're just peddling in the same space. We're not moving forward. So we are expending a lot of energy. But if you really want to be far-sighted, we really have to have men as allies, both at home and at work. And I'm going to share some concrete strategies about how we can do that. But I'd like to share a small story, The Elephant and the Ant. And this is a wonderful way that you can use. All of the participants in the conference today, I want you to reflect on what this story means for you. And please feel free to share this along. So the story goes like this. The elephant wakes up in the morning when he's hungry, decides to forage in the forest when the sun is nice and warm, and then he comes back to take a nap in the shade. He decides what time he wakes up and when he goes to bed. But then in the same forest lived an ant. Now the ant's entire life schedule is dictated by when the elephant wakes up in the morning. What path the elephant walks in the morning, so that the ant has to be up before the elephant gets up. The ant has to forage a path, navigate away from where the elephant might step on the ant. Now, there are many moments in life when, as a place of privilege, we become the elephant, but there are ants around us and we're not even aware of it. So next time when you're in a room, reflect on that privilege that comes with it. Whether it may be that one colleague in the room who is not able to speak in English as well as the rest of the room, or that one colleague who's from Northeast who doesn't feel like she's part of the team or he's new, that one colleague who's maybe of a lower grade and sitting in a meeting which has higher grade employees and is feeling overawed by it. These are all elephant and ant situations. So it's very important to remember that men as allies, many times, they really need to emotionally connect with the topic. Cognitively, business leaders are mostly male and they recognize that, yes, diversity is good for innovation, diversity is good for profitability. But do they emotionally buy into it unless they're sensitized that you can be an ant? So I will now give you 4 concrete strategies. I have used these not yet in Indegene, it's a new place of work for me, but I have used these successfully in the past. And I am very, very excited that I'm going to be expanding the agenda in Indegene as well. Now, what are those ways that you can make this change happen? So number one is make sure that we share our personal stories, like the way Vinita was saying that create a personal connect, talk about your own obstacles where you have been on that path. And believe you me, there are paths around us. It could be a parent with a special needs child. It doesn't need to be only on gender. So talk about those change stories, those personal stories where people have overcome obstacles. Secondly, get those KPIs in their bonus sheets. Make sure that the leaders have numbers around the diversities, at least the outcomes. That is when they will start to ask you questions. How do I make this out? And the outcome shouldn't be something which is a low hanging fruit. The outcome has to be about senior women entering a leadership level. It shouldn't be about the number of women in the company. It based on the evolution that you're at. Some companies can target higher level goals, but make sure there are numbers around the bonus tied to diversity. So that's number 2 strategy. So number 1 is emotional connect, number 2 is numbers connect, number 3 I would say is make the men who have working wives as champions of DNI. I have found this to be very effective. I found colleagues who have either working wives or male leaders. How many male CEOs have working wives? Find those. Find people in the company who are at senior levels who have working wives. So they would be, they've spent the last 20 years seeing how their wives have navigated tough career paths. It could also be a man who's been raised by a very strong female role model, either a working mother or someone who's a single mother. I have found these men to be wonderful DNI champions. And the fourth one, I would say, is reverse mentoring. I believe reverse mentoring is an extremely wonderful way that you can create change slowly but surely in both parties. What is reverse mentoring? Just for the benefit of many of our participants it may be new to you. Reverse mentoring is when you have someone very different at a junior grade. Typically, it could be someone, a graduate engineer trainee or a management trainee, or someone with maybe 0 to 3 years, a millennial, a digital native. And that person works with the leadership on a one-on-one basis, regularly exchanging views, typically in an informal fashion outside the premises or in a walking format where you walk around the college or office campus or on a Zoom call now, where you talk about policies, anything that's on your mind. You test each other with communication that has happened in the company. And reverse mentoring is a powerful way for a leader to become aware of a different viewpoint. It could be a female mentee, it could be a digital native. You can spin it as a digital exposure, or you don't need to spin it only from a gender diversity perspective. So make it as close to the business agenda of the leader. So just to reiterate, emotional connect, target men as who people target their numbers. Make sure our men have a personal role model in their lives, either their wives or their working moms. And finally, have reverse mentors. And you have to choose your reverse mentors also very carefully, because they have a very good amount of influence. And I've seen that it becomes a wonderful platform for change. So I'll pause here, Bhavna.
Great. Thanks, Shanali. Those are some really specific and impactful interventions that anyone could undertake to create that kind of an environment. Dr. Swati or Vinita, did you want to add anything to that?
I love the strategies from Shanali, and could relate to so many of the stories that were going on. The one thing which I caught on the reverse mentoring part of it is we recently did a hackathon. In fact, it was devised by someone who's on the attendee list today in my team. What we did is we brought in the techies of the world, independent of any of their gender or orientation, and we asked them to do a hackathon for people with disabilities, right? And what technology can you innovate and make, which is directly implementable in our company today for our people with disabilities. And some of them were also participating, right? Like I said, it was mixed for all. But to make reverse mentoring come to life is what we felt at the end of the hackathon, because it wasn't a problem that we have to figure out technology for people with disabilities by a particular segment only. Everyone got built more empathy in the process of that hackathon, because they had to first discover what is the challenge. And I was just thinking about the same thing on gender. To understand a woman, I think you don't need to be a woman. That is a given. That's done and dusted. I think the other genders have to understand the opposite gender more.
Yes, yes.
I'd just like to add on, Bhavna. We often hear a she for a she, a he for a she. I would say it's the power of we. We should focus on that. And when we're looking at, and I keep on talking about the culture part, because strategies, interventions, even at Dr. Reddy's, we have a women touring program, which is to mentor women, and it's called Chrysalis. And we try to bring out, the best in women who are young in their careers by giving them role models who can be both men and women. So there are different things to choose from. But when we are looking at what really does the trick and really helps in building that culture of equality, it's threefold, according to me. One is about sensitizing people. We talked about biases sometime back. You also shared some examples, Vanita. So it's a lot about sensitizing people about which could be the possibilities or areas where they could be faltering, bring out their vulnerabilities also, which are there. So, you allow for self-disclosure, that safe space that I was talking about. Second is develop. When we are developing, focus on the we part of it and look at what complementary skill set and, more importantly, mindsets can be nurtured. A lot of responsibility lies on people, whether they are men or women, to do things as individuals responsibly back home and when at work, because many times we don't know what baggages they carry from home to work or vice versa. So like, because they would have spouses, they would have kids, and that's where Shonali, you were also giving some examples of role models. So being aware of that, so that development is a lot around that also. And when we are talking about the third part, I would say a whole lot of strategies around the right kind of engagement. So when we are saying, sensitize, develop, and engage. So when we are engaging with men or with women, what kind of conversations are we having? And when we are talking about dialing up innovation, nothing could be more important than having a design thinking mindset. For example, look at every person as an end user. It could be a woman or it could be a person at work, internally, a customer inside or externally. Can you dial up the empathy quotient? The moment we are dialing up all of that, our authenticity comes out to the fore, and we are able to add greater value in spaces that we've not even imagined. So the growth mindset multiplies, innovation comes out, a lot of things. There is a multiplier effect in terms of business value add.
Yes, definitely. So each of you has touched upon this idea of sensitizing individuals, men and women. If there's one group we know that's going to make the biggest difference, that ideally should be as sensitized as possible to this, is of course the leaders within an organization. And we know when leaders model behaviors that they want to see in an organization, everybody else follows suit. And it's true both ways. With positive behaviors, we end up creating, we see positive behaviors being adopted, or inclusive behaviors being adopted by people across the organization. And the reverse can also be true. So how do we what would be your thoughts on what specifically are the kind of behaviors through which leaders can communicate to everyone in the organization that this is something we believe in, this is something we stand for, and it is indeed a business priority? What any specific examples any of you can share that you have seen in terms of best practices?
I mean, are you talking about demonstration of leadership behaviors at
Yes.
work?
Yes.
I mean, what kind of behaviors leaders should demonstrate?
Yes.
So I'll just start by saying that, for example, both the verbal and non-verbal cues matter, because when people are watching leaders in action, they're watching not only what the leaders speak, but they're also watching the intent The
Correct.
behavior comes from the intent part of it. The intent and the energy definitely gets communicated far more powerfully, and the first impressions are formed by that. So leaders, when they are choosing their gestures, when they are choosing the, for example, the language that they choose, when they want to communicate, the semantics, those really matter. It's a lot about the emotion, because when you are trying to create, I think Shonali also mentioned that when we're talking about this entire concept of inclusion, it's a lot about intellectually connecting with the topic and theme, and also more importantly, emotionally connecting with it. So leaders have to be bought onto this agenda in a very emotional manner. So when they're emotional and passionate about it, obviously, in whatever they, in the ways they think, the ways they act, the way they engage, they will be oozing that kind of an inclusive quotient, I would say, inclusivity quotient. So they will walk into a room giving other people that comfort by saying that, okay, would you like to share? Or they will go back, away from a meeting, giving everybody a chance to feel that they have just been lifted because of the presence of a leader. So, these are things which are very revolutionary, and a lot of it starts in the mind. So, so leaders should be aware of the unconscious biases, and Vinita also spoke about it. Many times we fall into a trappings of these biases because we are always in the judgment mode. I would say that if the leaders are in the learner mode rather than the judgment mode, they will find so many avenues to learn and sponge from the experiences of others. For example, I have learned so much from my team members. The youngsters, they stump me with the kind of ideas they have to share. And many times my mind has opened saying, oh my God, this is so different. I never thought about it. It could be, things that I was not exposed to, or especially in the digital space also. So it's a very humbling experience. I would say when leaders dial up the humility quotient, that humility quotient, they are more grounded, they are more rooted. And the more grounded and rooted you are, you have better wings to fly. So isn't it a paradox of sorts? You are more connecting with people, you're more grounded, you're more humble, more willing to learn, and therefore you're more ready to take on whatever is more challenging and explore opportunities beyond. So leaders have to find that fine balance of being, people who use the head, but more importantly, the heart. And whenever they are communicating, and whenever they are saying things, they should be aware that whatever they do is going to touch the lives of people. So can they touch and transform in positive ways, which will impact people not only in the here and now, but beyond? And that is important, because many times when we look back, who are the ones who really we remember as mentors and role models? Those who really touched our lives and brought in the best in us, who brought out better versions of ourselves. So when the leaders are coming to work, they have a responsibility to really help lift and unravel the potential of people. Can they create more leaders? That's the space that they have to operate, not from an insecure zone.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you mentioned humility, and I love that you mentioned an openness to learning. Those two alone have to be the two most critical behaviors any leader can adopt to communicate to everyone that sense of yes, we're all here to learn and evolve and together create that kind of culture. I wanted to bring the conversation to behaviors in particular, because when we talk about creating this culture of equality, we know it goes beyond policies. You can have all the policies in place that signal equality, but people can still experience inequality, because inequality is experienced in day-to-day moments, in day-to-day interactions. And, these small moments of inequality that could be experienced, and what one can do or cannot do in those moments is the thing that will make a difference. And when they feel that safety, that is when it can if they feel open enough to talk about that, and as you said, create that culture of learning. Those are the things that are really going to make a difference. So Vinita, maybe if we can come back to you to add more thoughts on this idea, because I know you really this is something you like to talk a lot about as well, this idea of anything that gets in the way of bringing that whole self to work and not being able to express um, what gets in the way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I think we all need certain amount of up leveling and education on the power of bringing ourselves to work and being vulnerable and being authentic, right? We've gone through so many years, and this is a lot cultural, right? We've gone through layers and layers of years where we have been told to keep your personal side and your professional side separate, but really we are one human being, right? And I think one of my co-panelists spoke about stories, right? Share your story over there, and that's in my mind the vulnerability there to the table. How many times have we picked out our most vulnerable story and shared with our own teams, forget a larger audience, right? And being completely authentic. uh, I was listening to Dr. Swati and thinking about when she was talking about doing it from the heart, right? And why are we doing it? So it's very first, let me step back and say it's hard to get the entire organization on one side very quickly. It's not going to happen. It is a journey. It is a process. But if you were to take a leader specifically, because we were talking about how leaders can make the largest impact, you know it when a leader is being diverse to meet a number versus being diverse or being inclusive for because they themselves want to do it, they feel the need to do it. And it's easy to spot that, because there are numbers always. Every organization will have, hey, we want to hit this number when it comes to our women workforce, or other numbers on other parts, and we are so driven by that, and KRAs are good because it forces one to do it and think in that direction. But my hope is that somewhere on the journey where we are trying to meet our organization numbers, we are also asking ourselves, why are we doing it? And as we do it, as I go step by step and make my organization more diverse and more inclusive, am I seeing the value in it? And that to me is that cliff which you have to cross, and we will all cross it at different times. Some have crossed, some are still learning, and we'll keep doing it. But if you don't cross that cliff, or you don't have the courage to see what did diversity bring to your team, your company, and what's the direct benefit that you're bringing in, you will not cross it if you don't have an open mind for that. So I think we can't boil the ocean. There will always be minds which will never open up. Adult education is very hard, right? It's hard in your midlife to start thinking differently if you don't have an open mind. And sometimes I give it up on some people and say, okay, let's focus on the ones who have an open mind. Let's focus on them, and because then you can move faster, right? Rather than burning all your energies over there. So to summarize, the authenticity and the purpose, right? Why are we doing it is very, very important over here.
yes. Shanali, would you like to add?
Yes, I want to add a small way that I have connected with male allies, and to bring alive that point that Vinita is saying about vulnerability and purpose. I have been working on culture for a long time, and the fastest way to build trust is to share vulnerabilities with each other. And there's a lot of research to prove that. But very often, sharing personal stories has an impact. But I'll also tell you some ways to make it real for the male allies. So my first job, it was in a factory where I was the only woman they ever hired. This was my first job after my MBA from XLRI. I was a management trainee in a factory and a sales office in Asian Paints. And this was back in the early 2000s, where they posted me. They said, all management trainees, you go to do a sales stint. So there I was with no toilet for about 48 days. And this was an all male, office. And there's the scene in the movie Kargil Girl Gunjan Saxena, where, I don't know if you all have seen the movie, where she walks into the base of Udhampur, and the FO station people, they just stop in their tracks like something like a hippo has entered, a lion enclosure or something. They just completely freeze in their tracks. That's exactly the experiences I would have. Every day I would walk into the sales office. It was a fairly large go down as well as a warehouse and a sales office. Thereafter, I moved to a factory with 300 unionized blue collar workers. Again, this time I said, please build a toilet for me. So they did that. So every time I would walk into a room with only males in a management meeting later in my career, I would remember those moments when men would stop dead in their tracks to see a woman in the office. They would say, turn around very often and say, Sahab kidhar hai? And then my subordinates would say, Yehi Saab hai. And they wouldn't believe it. So a lot of times I would invite my male allies into women council meetings where they would be the only males in the room. And very often they would enter the room and say, "Oh my God, wow, am I the only male today in this office, in this meeting?" And I said, "Yeah, that's how I feel every time I walk into a management meeting." And these are ways in which one has to share the vulnerability, share evidence that going through a real experience is the only way that an adult, adults learn by doing and experiencing.
Yeah.
They don't learn by conceptual PowerPoints, right? We all agree to that. So how do you make the reality come alive for them if they haven't seen it in their life? And like Vinita says, there will be some closed minds, but those who are on the fence, that is the place where we have to target. And Bhavna, Vinita, Swati, I don't know if you all have experienced this, but I am seeing increasingly that men are becoming, very politically correct. Emotionally, they don't connect. They're not psychologically completely convinced. Many times I worry that because diversity is such a good thing to talk about, people say it for political correctness. And like, Vinita was saying, you can make out when the person is not really bought into it, but is just saying it for optics. And that is what a leader has to role model, that their authenticity cannot be faked. And therefore, reverse mentoring, giving them little micro experiments where they experience life on the other side is the way to bring that. So in my experience, I found the way to build vulnerability and trust is to make the leaders share these experiences in the when as and when they feel ready to talk about it. Like I would have my earlier company, my CEO would talk about how he would deal with conflicts in the room, and when there was a lady manager present, how they would entirely dial down the discussion and be more objective, less emotional, because they wouldn't want to be seen in a negative light by that one lady in the room. It may be very old fashioned for him to say, but it made me realize that these are the learnings. He needs to talk about it in the management meeting. Next, he needs to talk about it in the town hall. Third, he needs to talk about it when he's meeting the campus freshers. So every public forum, slowly you dial up the leader's ability to share their vulnerability. And it's the job of the culture advisor, the diversity champions, especially the younger, I would say, generation diversity champions. I find them much more clued in, much more passionate to handhold our leaders through these processes. So I think give it another 5 to 7 years, we should be completely much more aware, up to date, much more with it. And, all of us, we'll be watching from the sidelines and applauding. So I'm really waiting for that day.
Great.
Thank you.
I like your optimism, Shonali. All right. Let me ask the final question, and then we want to open it up for Q&A. And as the name of this panel suggests, creating a culture of equality is only going to happen if it is treated as the utmost priority from a business standpoint. So I suppose looking forward now, as we're looking ahead at 2021, how would you be prioritizing this personally, professionally, within the organization, through which practice, policy, any behaviors, anything you can speak to that will make it a priority for you?
You're on mute, Dr. Swati.
we are prioritizing it big time in terms of getting in more women into the work fray, and also creating growth bridges wherein whenever they have career breaks because of maternity or other issues that they are dealing with, they are able to quickly transition and there aren't any pressures that way. So a lot to have them and a lot to grow them, more to grow them. So when we're talking about growing them, it is about giving them those roles, those opportunities which are equal, and also trying to help them come more round in areas where they're probably not given enough exposure in the past. So that is the kind of thing. And third is, more importantly, creating that culture of equanimity and a fair play kind of a system where your conversations, your rewards, your recognition, the way you work, the ecosystems, all of that is hinged on self-belief, where you want to give women the power to believe that they are a very valuable contributing partner in the ecosystem. So we are going all out in terms of ideology or philosophy, which is a lot that I said, both the intellectual and more importantly, the emotional buy-in of the issue. That is where it is truly getting sold onto the issue. That is number one. Number two is putting together practices, and I'm not using the word policies because many times policies are written down documents which are not believed in true spirit. So it is about creating practices where the letters are manifested in action. And third, about behaviors of the leaders, behaviors of people. So the tone at the top matters a lot. Even the kind of conversations that goes around, that is the unsaid, the norms, etc. So where behaviors are concerned, a lot of our interventions which are around capability building, we focus on mindset. So opening up of the mind, which I said some time back, a lot about resilience, a lot about growth, and all of this we linked about what you were saying, Vinita, getting the full self of the person to work. So, it is about leading self, leading others, and then leading businesses. It can't happen when they're not leading themselves purposefully. I would tie it down back to purpose, which some of you, I mean, Shonali also mentioned, you also mentioned, Vinita. It's a lot about seeing purpose and value in this entire agenda. So what is the purpose that it brings? It helps at the individual level, it helps at the collective or the group level, it helps at the business level. So what better can you expect from an agenda such as this? So it is to expand the horizons of the thinking. And it is, I would not confine it by saying that we have started and after some years we are going to be here. It's going to be a journey of sorts. And I have a 21-year-old son. And I would like to share that a lot that I do when I'm dealing with him at home and I've been rearing him has consciously been to make him realize that, we have to nurture that respect quotient, that humility quotient. So as individuals, we have this responsibility at work and at home to create that ecosystem, which when I say ecosystem, it's not only what you're creating at work, but also everywhere around you, where that consciousness arises and we are able to, nurture this equality.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Swati.
I'll go
Vinita?
next. Yes.
Yeah.
So quickly on the organizational goal. So we have something called what we call social impact goals. They're around sustainability, impacting lives, and around inclusivity. So I'll just speak about the gender part, given the essence of this conversation. And we'd set some very nice goals for 2020, which we met quite early. So when we were resetting and looking forward for the next goal that we have as a company, we went to actually think of 2030. So instead of 2021, I'll talk about our 2030 goals. We call them our moonshot goals because we know how difficult it is to get there, right? And there's various aspects for it, but on the gender aspect, our moonshot goal for 2030, and we're a large company, so this is really moonshot for us. We plan to get to a 50% of women at work. And out of that, 40% in leadership. Now, this goal scares us as well as excites us because we know we have to take so many things to get there, and it's not just about hiring, right? It's about retaining, it's about the culture, it's about being inclusive on a daily basis. And that's our moonshot goal as a company. Everyone in the company gets it. We talk about it so much that everyone, if you talk to anyone at Dell and say moonshot goals, and they know about it. We've done so much work around internalizing our goals so that we have the entire workforce marching towards it. On a personal front, and this is in your space, Bhavna, I know you've dedicated your career in, you've left Wall Street and come here and you've dedicated your career. And sometimes I feel I've not done enough in this space. So I want to do more gender dialogues. I want to bring the conversation to the table, not shy away from it. It's very easy to stay neutral, but I call the shots when I see a language difference, and I'm learning how to do it assertively without being very, very personal about it, because then you sort of close. And Shonali spoke about it. We got to earn the trust, but doing it in a way, and it's still a learning, doing it in a way such that you can uncover that language, change that language, and simple things like, I asked my husband to help at home. No, don't ask him to help. He lives here, right? He does his bit, I do my bit, and that's it. So small things like, and I tried this experiment with my mother. I said, Papa's not helping you, he's contributing. And
Right.
it was so difficult for her to understand. So I dumbed it down. I said, okay, let me explain it to you simply. And I'm hoping that as age comes down, as I'm talking to a different age group, it's going to be easier and we build a better world together. But we have to do our bit on the gender dialogue.
Definitely. Shonali, last thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm very, very passionate about bringing the gender diversity dialogues to the dining table at home, just like we bring it to the boardrooms at work. My 10-year-old son can explain menstruation to his female friends, and that's my big achievement so far. And I'm hoping to work with this, even by setting a very good role model at home. So both my husband and I have really, we are playing to our strengths, whether it comes to home life or career life. So I think those are very, very important lessons, because diversity is a very complex topic. And whether it is gender, whether it is sexual orientation, race, caste in India, there are many, many milestones that we are yet to cover in India. Now, bringing the question back to what we can do as a business. So, as a priority, the company that I work for, we've been recognized in the industry as one of the, we've won several awards in the recent 2 years. We have now created a network of internal mentors for more women in the leadership. So that is one of our main priorities. Right now, we are lagging behind in that index. So we want to have more women in the leadership. Until and unless you have a woman in the decision making table, you will not see real change. And that is my fervent belief. And I'm very happy to be corrected by male DNI champions, but that is my learning so far. Whether it comes to budgets for DNI, the decision makers have to be women rather than men making budgets for DNI. So those are some of the topics that or organizational priorities that we're chasing. Getting more women up the ladder, providing them mentors who are both men and women, and having a woman decide the budgets for DNI and not having to rely on a male decision maker. So let's see. I personally believe that more women CEOs, more women entrepreneurs, people like yourself, Bhavna, and internal change activists like Vinita and Dr. Swati, those are the need of the hour. So I want to tell every woman or even every man who believes in DNI, if they're planning to quit their professional careers, take a break, please remember that you leaving the organization means you're stopping the place for another 10 women who can be inspired by you. So you are not just one person alone. You represent that step, because when you open the door, the next generation opens the door. So it's very important for women to stay in the race, even if their pace is a bit slower because of various other responsibilities in life. I always tell women, don't drop out, because when you drop out, believe you me, another 10 people behind you will drop out, because you stayed here, you will inspire another 5 people in your circle to carry on. So
Yes.
that's my message to everyone who's listening today, that please encourage women around you to stay in it, and create that ecosystem. Don't be apologetic about your ambitions. More power to you.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Shonali. Before we bring this to a close, we just have one question from the audience. And Dr. Swati, maybe I'll pose this to you. So the question is, while there are many strategies that organizations have implemented, how do they measure the effectiveness of any of these measures? So maybe if you can just touch upon a specific example and how you're
Sure.
doing that.
So, when you're talking about the impact measures, we started this conversation about innovation, right? How does the culture of equality really impact innovation? So you could pick up impact measures such as engagement, whether the engagement of people is higher. That could be an impact measure to know whether the D&I initiatives are really working. You could also look at innovation. You could look at the kind of cases against, like, of course those are more about the posh cases, etc., but more about the awareness part of it. So just see whether you are trying to move from a negative side of the continuum to a positive side where diversity is really celebrated. You can also look at the verbiage and the narratives changing in the organization. When I'm saying verbiage and narratives, it's about, what words are people using. It's a very interesting study, because normally you will find that the words are skewed on one side when it's a little male dominated, or equality doesn't thrive, or it's only lettered. So when it moves to that spirit part of it, you will find the narratives changing really quickly. You can also have things like, when you are wanting to put numbers for hiring, you want to put numbers for how many people have not only been hired, but really grown in the ranks and files and made it to the top. Women in the leadership positions, those could be also a way to see that how many have been really nurtured and made it their way there and have hung on because of the good culture and ecosystem that you provided for. Those could be the ones. You could also look at, when I say engagement level, it's not only about how satisfied they are, it is about how contributing they are, because engagement truly is it's a connection of satisfaction and contribution. So they will contribute by the stretch hours, they will be contributing by cross-functional team activities. So you will find various ways of capturing this. But if you really ask me, I don't believe in the fact that we need to measure everything at a given point in time. If you're doing things right, it will show up. Don't have trivial many measures. Have a vital few. Those vital few are the ones that work for your organization. Pick up those metrics, look at it, watch it, and over a period of time, just find out whether it's really working. It may not be a Q to Q, like a quarter to quarter kind of a result. It's not that easy to show because it's a lead indicator. It's not a lag indicator. But trust me, when you're focused on this lead, you're going to see a difference in the lag. So your customer engagement will go up, your financial metrics will go up, your internal business processes will see a seamlessness in terms of speed and rigor. Get more women, grow them, and it'll all fly.
Great, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Swati. Thank you, Vinita. Thank you, Shonali, for engaging in this really important discussion today. As we all believe, creating that culture of equality, it's not just a nice to have, it's an absolute must have. It's a must have for us as individuals, for our well-being. It's a must have for businesses. And as we've all articulated in so many ways, it's a must have for the world. So thank you so much to each of you for doing the great work that you're doing in advancing this equality agenda within your organizations and in your personal spheres of influence as well. So thank you so much.